I'm Margaret Hoover, and I'm here in the Toyota Solutions studio, and we are just finishing up with the panel, The Smartest Kids in the World, and as it turns out, we have one of the smartest children in the world here with us right now. We have Kim Pate, who's here with us, and Amanda Ripley, who is an author, also of the book Smartest Kids in the World, here to talk to us about education reform. We just had a great panel talking about what to do about education. Why don't we start by the story of your book, how you did it, because you profiled Kim in your book. So how did it come about that you discovered Kim and wanted to help write about her and tell her story?
I kept hearing about these countries that supposedly educate all their kids to really high levels and have just gotten super smart in the last, 20 years. And I couldn't quite visualize what it was like to be a kid there. I wanted to see that through the eyes of students. And so I decided that it would make sense to follow 3 American teenagers who were going for various reasons on study abroad programs for a year to live with a host family in high school, very young, and to attend public high school in these countries. So I reached out to AFS, which is an organization that helps students do this if they want to go spend a year abroad. And they introduced me to Kim. And I read Kim's blog, Kim raised all the money she needed to go to Finland all by herself, which was like 10 grand, right? I mean, It was a significant chunk of change. And one of the things she did, in addition to selling cookies and beef jerky and all kinds of entrepreneurial things, is that she set up a blog and asked strangers for money. So I read her blog and I knew my work here was done because I could follow Kim on her quest to go from rural Oklahoma to rural Finland.
Okay, so Kim, tell us, why did you want to go from your hometown in Oklahoma to Finland when you were in high school for a year?
Well, I knew I wanted to go somewhere. It was kind of just deciding where was this great adventure going to take place.
Why did you want to go somewhere?
I wasn't satisfied. It wasn't the place, I didn't feel like I was being fulfilled there. There wasn't enough of what I was looking for. It wasn't engaging.
Why Finland?
I was interested in the culture. It's very different from American culture, so I wanted to kind of see that. Also, their education system at the time, it was just starting to kind of become this big thing about how the Finnish education system is great and Finnish schools are something that should be admired. And so I wanted to see what was going on there that wasn't happening in America.
All right. You raised $10,000.
I did.
You talked a little bit, Amanda, about how she did it. What did you do also that Amanda didn't cover?
I also, I blogged quite a bit. I received a few scholarships. I went door to door. I sent, I think, 80, 90 letters to all of the businesses in my town asking for donations with this letterhead that had my picture and an arrow pointing to Finland and all of these things.
And what was the response?
From the businesses, I got nothing.
No, but this is important actually because it was right after the recession when this happened. Kim's 15. She sends off all these letters with this awesome letterhead and gets no response and doesn't give up, which I think is what I love about this. So even though this is about other countries' successes, it's also an American story, right?
Yeah.
About an American girl who doesn't give up, who doesn't quit.
So you lived in Finland and you wrote when you were in Finland?
I did.
Regularly?
Yeah, I had a blog that I maintained to keep my scholarships. I also ended up getting a bi-weekly column for my town's local newspaper, which I wrote about what I was experiencing, and then my host mother would translate it because she was a journalist.
What did you discover in Finland? What were some of your eye-opening experiences in terms of education in Finland?
I was so flabbergasted by the schools, really didn't know what to do with myself because the teachers were engaging and they were interacting and they wanted us to call them by their first names, and it was very much a back and forth. I mean, Finnish people are very quiet, but as much as I could get them to speak, it was a very back and forth.
And you had a lot more free time too, right? Compared to American schools are relatively controlled environments compared to a lot of high schools around the world, I think.
Yeah, that's actually a very important point. The student autonomy was something that actually existed in Finland. Students were expected to take care of their own education because people, they're students, they care about their education. Of course they're going to do what's best for them. And if they don't, that's because they didn't, work hard enough or something. It's not something like they had to be corralled into the school or forced to go or, threatened. It's like they came for their classes, they would leave during lunch, they would come back. It was their thing. They were students and they took a certain amount of pride and responsibility in that.
How did that compare to your high school experience in Oklahoma?
I think in Oklahoma we weren't really sure why we were there. Some of us tried to find reasons why we should be there. We joined our marching band, which is very good in that school, our sports, drama, everybody, it seemed, was kind of trying to find a reason that they were being put through this, because it wasn't necessarily because of this great education.
Right, interesting. So, and Amanda, what did you, so that was the experience with Kim in Finland. You also have followed 2 other students to different countries, Poland and
South Korea.
And what was the takeaway, what were some of the takeaways with those 2 scenarios?
So I chose these 3 countries because all of them outperform the United States on various outcomes related to education while spending less per student on kindergarten through high school education. But they're really wildly different places in many ways. So Finland is a much more kind of humane environment for education. Korea is really a pressure cooker model where kids are working very long hours, studying very late into the night, and often sleeping through their classes because they're so tired from studying so late, which is crazy. And everyone there is pretty critical of their own system. They do achieve really amazing results for almost all their kids, regardless of socioeconomic status. So there are some really interesting lessons from that system, but it is also a cautionary tale about how maybe not to get to the top of the world in education. And then Poland was really kind of, to me, the most eye-opening for the US because it has only very recently gone on this trajectory to become one of the education superpowers in the past 10 years. And they have a pretty high child poverty rate, and it's a pretty messy, complicated country, so in some ways more similar to the United States. But one thing that all 3 American students told me, despite all these differences, is that kids took school more seriously in these countries. Like, they were more bought into it for various reasons, and that makes everybody else's job easier, right, for teachers and principals and parents.
And that's just one of the challenges we have, and we have some Twitter questions that are coming in. And one of the questions that the folks on Twitter want to know is, here in the United States, what can parents do to support teachers?
So one thing that really surprised me that I wasn't even thinking would be the case was that in these other countries, one thing you don't see in schools are parents. You don't see a lot of parents doing the kind of things that American parents are often asked to do, like coach or fundraise or do the PTA.
Even the question just represents a different changes, right? That the parents are asking questions on how they can help.
Right, but parents are vital at the same time. So what you're seeing in these countries is that parents are very involved in their kids' education at home. So it's more about reading with your kid, talking about numbers from a very young age.
Even your host mother was translating your articles.
Yeah, exactly.
In order to,
And so when I actually asked your host mother, I don't know if you know this, but I asked her, what does your children's elementary school ask you to do as a parent? Because I'm a parent of a public elementary school student in America, and so I thought, I'm constantly getting asked to do stuff that has nothing to do with learning, in most cases. Right. And she said, I don't understand the question. Like, what do you mean? What do they ask me to do? And she said, well, I am supposed to get the children to school on time. And that was like all she could think of, So really the priorities are a little clearer. For American parents, there's a lot of noise, a lot of confusion about what we should do to be helpful, because actually American parents are super involved in their kids' schools, and more involved than I think they get credit for. 9 out of 10 of them show up at meetings, PTA meetings, other parent-teacher conferences, and 6 out of 10 do fundraising for their school every year. That's a lot of time and energy from a group of people who actually work really hard.
So that's actually not the problem. The problem isn't parent involvement, is what we're hearing.
It's the location of the involvement. Let's focus on talking to our kids, talking to them about books, reading and listening, and that engagement is where the magic happens, less so in the bake sales. And although, God loves a bake sale.
And the bake sales are important because they got you to Finland.
Exactly.
Well, thank you both for being here at Women in the World and for being in the Toyota Solutions studio. We wish you a lot of luck as you go to college next year, and best of luck with your book promotion.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.